This is China. Not long ago, this entire area was farmland. Now, it's a case study for how cruel the Chinese housing boom can be. Taking a train between the cities of Luoyang and Zhengzhou, you witness endless half-built residential towers, some completed, others abandoned, and many more left as mere skeletons. This is a stark illustration of China's housing crisis, a result of economic malaise and broken dreams. To put things into perspective, 70% of Chinese household wealth is tied up in real estate. The property industry accounts for around 1/5 of the country's GDP. Today, we're going to dive into China's housing crisis, a significant problem that's shaking the foundation of the country's economic model. This crisis is not only affecting millions of people, but also posing a challenge for the government and its leaders. And the big question: will this Ponzi-like property market push China into an economic collapse, or is the housing sector in China now too big to fail? We'll try to answer that question in this video. This crisis comes at a critical time for China's leader, Xi Jinping. He was just elected for a third term as China's undisputed leader, but the CCP is not likely set for an economic crisis of this magnitude. The Chinese government faces a monumental task of restoring trust in the system. However, their response has been disjointed and slow, overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. The housing market needs to see stalled projects completed, construction firms and workers reimbursed, and investors repaid on their fixed income products. All this must be done without reinflating the unsustainable debt bubble that the property market has become. There are two immediate causes of the housing crisis: a crackdown on the property industry's excess and China's zero-COVID policy. The crackdown has restricted developers' liabilities to assets, net debt to equity, and cash to short-term debt, forcing many to stop unsustainable borrowing and sell down assets. This has severely limited their ability to continue building. Meanwhile, the zero-COVID policy has disrupted home buying, with fear and uncertainty discouraging potential buyers. Before the implementation of the 3 Red Lines policy 2 years ago aimed at curbing borrowing, Chinese housing developers had access to even greater levels of leverage compared to Japanese developers in the 1980s or American developers in 2008. This is particularly true when considering factors such as pre-sale and informal financing methods. Chinese first-tier cities such as Beijing and Shanghai have now become some of the most expensive in the world, with widening house price-to-income ratios which are frustrating youngsters trying to get into the market. The media has even coined a new term, six wallet, to describe the way young couples have to tap into their own 2 wallets and those of all 4 of their parents to be able to buy a property. Nonetheless, Chinese households are still willing to pour their life savings into property as long as house prices keep rising. Camouflaged under the term improvement housing, which is supported by the CEWC, many Chinese homebuyers are expressly chasing potential returns from the investment they've known over the past 2 decades. This is strikingly similar to the behavior of investors during the Japanese and US housing booms. China's developers need to pre-sell homes long before they're built to generate liquidity. Last year, they pre-sold 90% of homes. However, with banks cutting their exposure to the property sector and sales falling, the Ponzi-like nature of the property market is exposed. Proceeds from these pre-sales became the biggest source of funding for developers, which counted on increasing sales of unfinished apartments to keep money flowing for immediate needs. Local governments enabled the practice by issuing pre-sale permits to developers for projects that had completed as little as 25% of their planned construction. The developers could sell apartments for their full price, while buyers in many cases made down payments of around 30% and took out mortgages for the rest. The money went into escrow accounts to pay for the construction, but loosely defined rules let many developers withdraw cash before they completed the buildings. Problems arose when developers, with revenues from pre-sales declining and loans harder to obtain, started running short of cash last year to service their debts. Evergrande, the world's most indebted developer, defaulted in December of 2021, and at least 28 other property firms have missed payments or gone into restructuring. Many potential home buyers have dropped out of the market, but the most worrying aspect is the millions waiting for homes they've already paid for. Only 60% of homes pre-sold between 2013 and 2020 have been delivered, and buyers who have been waiting for years face an uncertain future and struggle to get their down payments back. To restore confidence, cities have announced various measures such as loosening rules on mortgage access and encouraging new buyers. However, these efforts have largely fallen flat and local bailout funds may be insufficient. The central government is stepping in, providing direct liquidity and backing bond issuance by private developers, shifting the risk to the state. This public spending has its downsides as it fills a hole created by bad governance and dubious property developers. There's an ongoing debate on how far the central government is willing to go to restore confidence, temporarily easing the 3 red lines policy or acting as a lender of last resort for all stalled projects is within their financial means, but it may encourage more developers to ask for assistance and push the government to subsidize more of the property sector, the opposite of what was intended with the crackdown on leverage. So, to the big question, will a failing property market push China into an economic collapse? The housing bubble in China poses a significant risk of spiraling the country into an economic collapse due to its outsized influence on the overall economy. Real estate and related industries such as construction and building materials have been major drivers of China's economic growth in recent decades. As a result, a significant portion of the country's GDP relies on the continued expansion of the property sector. If the housing bubble were to burst, the shock waves would ripple through these interconnected industries, leading to widespread job losses, reduced consumer spending, and a sharp decline in GDP. If history is any indication of where this will end, we can look to Japan. Japan's 1987 to 1989 property and stock bubble expanded most rapidly after the authorities introduced easing policies to promote domestic demand. Borrowing expanded dramatically and liquidity was funneled into stock and property until the point where, for companies, financial speculation became more profitable than actually running a business. China, decades later, has also allowed the real economy and the financial system to decouple. The country's clearly bubbly property market is exceeding that of the US, EU, and Japan combined. By 2021, 41% of the total assets in China's banking system were accounted for by property-related loans and credit. So if there is a crash in the Chinese housing market, the rest of the economy could collapse as well. So what do you think? Will Xi Jinping and the CCP be able to fix the Chinese housing market, or is it destined to fail? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to Profit Protection for more content like this. To get an even more bearish prediction for China, check out this video where Peter Zeihan explains why China won't last this decade. You can check it out here.